Evet arkadaşlar merhabalar tekrar. Nasılsınız? İkinci sınıflarım. Evet inşallah iyisinizdir. Şimdi devam edeceğiz. 7 haftalık ders demiştik. Bir haftasını bitirdik. Geriye 6 haftalık kaldı. Şimdi bu haftayı 9. hafta olarak kabul ediyorum. 9. haftanın birinci dersi olarak bu dersi işleyeceğiz. Öncelikle yani arka plandan dolayı kusura bakmayın. Yani olduğu kadar burası hani benim evimin mutfağı, masa falan burası rahat ve geniş bir ortam. Rahat ediyorum burada o yüzden arka plana takılmayın bana bakın. Tamam mı? Orası öyle. İkincisi de hani belki merak ediyorsunuzdur hani neden bu dersi bu şekilde yapıyor hocam hani niye canlı değil şöyle değil böyle değil falan kafanızda sorular vardır. Hani neden bu tarzda? Bunun birden fazla sebebi var. Oldukça da geçerli sebepler fakat yani anlatması şimdi uzun sürer. Burada bunun hakkında konuşup da vakit harcamak da istemiyorum. Önümüzdeki dönemlerde yüz yüze ders yaptığımız zaman otur karşılıklı konuşuruz bununla ilgili. Neden bu şekilde olduğunu. Böyle olması gerekti çünkü. Dediğim gibi anlatırım sebeplerini. Siz derslerimizi takip etmeye çalışın elinizden geldiği kadar. Bu anlattığım konular içerisinden de final ödevi vereceğim zaten. Dediğim gibi ayın 14'ünde 14 Haziran'da final ödevleriniz de yayınlanacak. Ondan sonra belli bir süreniz olacak bu ödevleri hazırlamak için. Şimdi diğer finalleri yapıyorsunuz hali hazırda biliyorum. Onlar bittikten sonra herhalde bu yaza kalan uygulamalı derslerin finalleri, ödevleri gelecekse onları da yapmanız için vakit olacak. Ondan sonra bütünlemeler yani iki tarafın takvimi biraz farklı. Yani bu yaza bırakılan uygulamayla diğer finaller ve bütünlemelerin takvimi biraz daha farklı. O yüzden hani sıkıntınız olmasın. Hepsi için vaktiniz olacak. Temmuz başı gibi de bitmiş olacak hepsi inşallah. Allah kısmet ederse. Ben dersime devam edeceğim. Bu ikinci haftada önemli bir yer anlatmak istiyorum size. Şimdi bunları Türkçe anlattım. İngilizceye geçeceğim şimdi. Hani şey olsun, önce bir sohbet gibi olsun istedim. Birkaç dakika sizinle bir açıklamalar yapmak istedim. Today I would like to talk about a very important place in our country, Göbekli Tepe. It's one of the most ancient and important places in the world, as you know. It's 6 miles from Urfa. Urfa is an ancient city in southeastern Turkey, and this startling archaeological discovery was made a long time ago. This place has massive carved stones about 11,000 years old, crafted and arranged by prehistoric people who had not yet developed metal tools or even pottery. The megaliths predate Stone Age by some 6,000 years. This place is called Göbekli Tepe, and Klaus Schmidt, a German archaeologist who has been working here more than a decade, he is convinced it is the site of the world's oldest temple. In the pits, standing stones or pillars, as we call them, are arranged in circles. Beyond them, on the hillside, are 4 other rings of partially excavated pillars. Each ring has a roughly similar layout. In the center are 2 large stone T-shaped pillars encircled by slightly smaller stones facing inward. The tallest pillars tower 16 feet, and Schmidt says they weigh between 7 and 10 tons each. As we walk among them, there are some blank and some elaborately carved pillars. There are foxes, lions, scorpions, and vultures carved on them, on the broad sides of the pillars. Schmidt points to the great stone rings. One of them is 65 feet across, and he says this is the first human-built holy place. Schmidt says to imagine what the landscape would have looked like some 11,000 years ago, before centuries of intensive farming and settlement turned into the nearly featureless brown expanse it is today. Well, prehistoric people would have gazed upon herds of gazelle and other wild animals, gently flowing rivers, which attract migrating geese and ducks, fruit and nut trees, and rippling fields of wild barley and wild wheat varieties, such as emmer and einkorn. Schmidt says this area was like a paradise. Indeed, Göbekli Tepe sits at the northern edge of the fertile crescent, an isle of mild climate and arable land from the Persian Gulf to present-day Lebanon, Israel, Jordan, and Egypt, and would have attracted hunter-gatherers from Africa and Levant. And partly because Schmidt has found no evidence that people permanently resided on the summit of Göbekli Tepe itself, he believes that this was a place of worship only, on an unprecedented scale, humanity's first cathedral on a hill, first temple. Well, he explains that he has mapped the entire summit using ground-penetrating radar and surveys and charting where at least 16 other megalith rings remain buried there across 22 acres. The 1 acre excavation covers less than 5% of the site. He says archaeologists could dig here for another 50 years and barely scratch the surface, cannot reach the entire thing for another 100, maybe 100 years. Göbekli Tepe was first examined and dismissed by University of Chicago and Istanbul University anthropologists in the 1960s. As part of a sweeping survey of the region, they visited the hill, saw some broken slabs of limestone, and assumed the mound was nothing more than an abandoned medieval cemetery. But in 1994, Schmidt was working on his own survey of prehistoric sites in that region. After reading a brief mention of the stone-littered hilltop in the University of Chicago researchers' report, he decided to go there himself and look for himself. From the moment he first saw it, he knew the place was extraordinary. Unlike the star plateaus nearby, Göbekli Tepe, which means belly hill in Turkish, has a gently rounded top that rises 50 feet above the surrounding landscape. Yerden 50 feet yukarı kadar böyle bir tepecik yapıyormuş arkadaşlar. Dümdüz alanda bir tepe var. To Schmidt's eye, the shape stood out. Only man could have created something like this, he says. It was clear right away this was a gigantic Stone Age site. The broken pieces of limestone that earlier surveyors had mistaken for gravestones suddenly took on a different meaning. Schmidt returned a year later with 5 more colleagues with him, and they uncovered the first megaliths. A few buried so close to the surface, they were scarred by plows. As the archaeologists dug deeper, they unearthed pillars arranged in circles. Schmidt's team, however, found none of the telltale signs of a settlement. That's an interesting thing. No settlement, no cooking hearths, houses, and none of the clay fertility figurines that litter nearby sites of about the same age. The archaeologists did, but did find evidence of tool use, including stone hammers and blades. And because those artifacts closely resemble others from nearby sites, previously carbon dated to about 9000 BC, Schmidt and his co-workers estimate that Göbekli Tepe's stone structures are the same age. Limited carbon dating back then, undertaken by Schmidt at the site, confirms this assessment. Well, the way Schmidt sees it, Göbekli Tepe's sloping and rocky ground is a stone cutter's dream. Even without metal chisels or hammers, just stone ones, prehistoric masons wielding flint tools could have chipped away at softer limestone outcrops, shaping them into pillars on the spot before carrying them a few hundred yards to the summit and lifting them upright. Imagine that was done 11,000 years ago. Yes. Then Schmidt says, once the stone rings were finished, the ancient builders covered them over with dirt. Eventually, they placed another ring nearby or on top of the old one. Over centuries, these layers created the hilltop. Today, Schmidt oversees a team of more than a dozen archaeologists, 50 local laborers, and a steady stream of very enthusiastic students. And he typically excavates at the site for 2 months in the spring and 2 in the fall, because summer temperatures are too high in the area and winter is too rainy. But in 1995, he finally bought a traditional Ottoman house with a courtyard in Urfa to use as a base of operations. On the day the writer of the article visited that place, a Belgian man sits at one of the end of the long table in front of the pile of bones. An archaeologist from the Ludwig Maximilian University in Munich specializes in the analysis of animal remains. And since 1998, he has examined more than 100,000 bone fragments from Göbekli Tepe. He has often found cut marks and splintered edges on them, which were the signs that the animals from which they came were butchered and cooked here. The bones, stored in dozens of plastic crates, stacked in a storeroom at the house, and they are the best clue to how people who created Göbekli Tepe lived. Because there are no houses, these bones are the clues. Peters has identified tens of thousands of gazelle bones, which make up more than 60% of the total, plus those of other wild game, such as boar, sheep, and red deer. He has also found bones of a dozen different bird species, including vultures, cranes, ducks, and geese. The first year, we went through 15,000 pieces of animal bone, all of them wild. It was pretty clear we were dealing with a hunter-gatherer site, avcı toplayıcı bir alanla uğraştıklarını düşünüyorlarmış. He said, it's been the same every year since. The abundant remains of wild game indicate that the people who lived here had not yet domesticated animals or farmed. Evet, daha hayvanların bile evcilleştirilmediği ya da tarımın daha bulunmadığı zamanlardan kaldığını gösteriyormuş arkadaşlar. Bu vahşi hayvan kemiklerinin çokluğu. But Peters and Schmidt said, Göbekli Tepe's builder were on the verge of a major change in how they lived, thanks to an environment that held the raw materials for farming. They had wild sheep. Koyunlar daha vahşiymiş o zamanlar, düşünün yani. Wild sheep, wild grains, buğdaylar da vahşi buğday. Daha çiftçilikte kullanılan buğdaylar değil, wild grains, that could be domesticated. Sonradan evcilleştirilebilen, sonradan kullanılır hale getirilebilecek şekilde. And the people with the potential to do it, Schmidt says. In fact, research at other sites in the region has shown that within 1,000 years of Göbekli Tepe's construction, settlers had corralled sheep, cattle and pigs. Evet, 1000 sene içerisinde evcilleştirmişler bu hayvanları. 1000 sene sanki çok kısa bir süreymiş gibi. Evet. And at a prehistoric village just 20 miles away, genetics found evidence of the world's oldest domesticated strains of wheat. This is the important part. Radiocarbon dating indicates agriculture development there around 10,500 years ago, or just 5 centuries after Göbekli Tepe's construction. Yani alanda ilk vahşi buğdaydan tarımsal buğdaya dönüştürülmüş buğdaylar bulunuyor arkadaşlar, dünyadaki ilk örnekleri. Evet, birinci saatimizi şimdilik tamamladık arkadaşlar. Kalanını da ikinci saatte anlatacağım. I'll see you in our second video, and I'll continue to talk about Göbekli Tepe in our second video. Okay, I'll see you there. Bye bye.